It's funny. Last Sunday, I used a story from my experience in a youth camp called Centrifuge. Well, this week, I'm going to use another one. So, I will say that in as much as my perspective evolved to the point where it is today, when I was a teenager, some of my best experiences in life, the first time I really got excited about my spirituality was at this youth camp. Because they know how to rile you up. In fact, one of the things they do is when you get up in the morning, you come in the door in the main area to get started for the day, and they've got music cranked, and all the counselors are like, "Hey, good morning, high five, welcome, come on!" Which, when I was a counselor, I felt the kids' pain because they're like, "What are you doing? Oh my gosh, it's so early." But it was a day in, day like all day long. You had things going on. You had excitement in the morning, Bible study, then recreation, and then you had what they called track times, where you could take up something that you wanted to do. Everything from backpacking for boys only or for girls only to other things along those lines. And then in the evening, you'd have worship, and then what they call like fellowship time, where you do some fun activity. And this is all week long. And of course, by the end of it, a lot of people get really excited about their faith. People rededicate their lives to God. People get saved, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the place where I enjoyed this most was in Glorieta, New Mexico, on a mountaintop, oddly enough. And I remember remarking to one of my counselors, "Man, I wish life could be this way all the time. This is so great." He's like, "This is called a mountaintop experience. You're not meant to stay here. You're meant to go back down into the valley and do the work." I'm like, way to spoil the fun, bro. And so that stuck with me, though, because it began to make more sense as I got older. Those moments on the mountaintop where everything is awesome. It's like the Lego movie. Everything is awesome! But it's not always awesome, as it was the case in the Lego movie. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's fun. And in fact, sometimes life, when you're not on the mountaintop with God, is not at all enjoyable. It's hard work. In fact, sometimes you kind of want to go, "Where are you, God? And what are you doing? And why am I in this handbasket? What is going on here?" And so it makes it really hard, especially when you've been in the valley for a long time, to want to stay true to what you're doing. And that's where mountaintop experiences are so important, because they can get you to a place where it can refresh you. Now, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I also want to point out some very interesting symbolic motif repetition here. You know how I talk about how the Bible repeats the sort of storyline arcs? Like, how many different old and barren couples were there in the Bible that conceived? Seven, including, including Zechariah and Elizabeth. So that's one of the things. So notice, Moses is going up to the mountain to meet with God. And he gets up there with just Joshua, his assistant, who, interestingly enough, if you take the roots in Hebrew with Joshua and Jesus, or Yeshua, it's the same root. And you know what that word means? Salvation. Interesting stuff. They hang out there how many days? 6 days. On the seventh day, that's when God spoke to him. And then they were up there for 40 days and 40 nights to receive the Torah. Again, 40 days and 40 nights in the flood, 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai, 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness being tempted by the Satan. I love the way our Bible goes. Pay attention here. But let's forward to Jesus' story. Now, what's interesting, how many days between Peter's recognition of Jesus as the anointed and the time when they go up on the mountaintop? How many days pass? Thinking of repeating motifs here. 6 days, yeah. So 6 days before God begins to give Moses the Torah on the mountaintop. 6 days between the recognition of Jesus as God's anointed and the time where he takes them up on the mountaintop for him to be revealed. So also, notice that Peter and James and John are sort of his Joshuas. Again, he's Moses 2.0 here. So he's got 3 instead of 1. And who does he meet on the mountaintop? Moses and Elijah. See if you're remembering what's going on in the gospel readings. So Moses, who first received Torah, Elijah, who was the main prophet that kind of helped hold people accountable to it, who was sort of in the lineage of Moses, meet Jesus at the mountaintop. So these three main prophets of God's covenantal relationship with us are revealed in dazzling brilliance, much like the cloud on top of Mount Sinai. So it's signifying the importance of Jesus. Now, Peter, in his true speak first, think later fashion, is like, I don't know what to do here. Jesus, you want me to build some shelters for you, some sukkot, so that you can hang out here. This is really cool. This is amazing. You're up here with Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. How much better of an experience can you get as a disciple than to experience being with the guys? We're talking the guys. And Jesus says, no. We're going to go back down the mountain. And not only back down the mountain, but also, don't tell anyone. Wait until after the resurrection before you tell this story. Well, wait a minute. Jesus, you took them up on the mountain for a reason. Why would you reveal yourself with Moses and Elijah on the mountaintop with these three specific disciples if you didn't want them to say anything? We never really quite know why Jesus didn't want them to say anything. Most scholars assume that it means that Jesus was unable to really reveal his true purpose as Messiah until he was vindicated by resurrection. Anyway, they had this incredible mountaintop experience. Now, raise your hand if you've ever had a mountaintop experience in your life, in your spirituality. Excellent. And did it help? Excellent. Did it inform how you understand your spirituality? Okay. How so? If you want to share. Or if you want to wait until sermon sharing, we can do that. And yet, do you find that the greatest growth in your life was at the mountaintop or in the valley? Valley. Thanks, God. Way to make it easy for us. So, what we need to remember sometimes, especially right now, like, I don't know about you, but I never thought I would be happy to see California Highway Patrol on the highways, pulling people over. I have never been more anxious on the roads in my life than I am right now. I was talking to my parents, and they are seeing similar insanity on the roads in Georgia as we are here. So it's not just California. You get a sense that there's just an edgy, aggressive energy that's sort of like buzzing around us at all times. Not with everyone, but with enough people to where it just feels like there's an extra layer of anxiety that you have to deal with when you go out your doors. Well, these are the times when we especially need to remember the importance of mountaintop experiences. Now, a lot of times it's either, like, say, for teenagers at youth camp, the women's retreat, vestry retreat, things like that. But there's also just the literal reality of getting up on the mountain and enjoying being in God's presence where you're not surrounded by people, and kind of remind yourself, or maybe with someone very close to you, like the big book of God's revelation, which is creation, is an important place to regroup. I'm feeling, the pull because it's been since Christmas time since I've been to the beach, and that's saying something because usually I like to go once a month, if not twice. And so it's important to have those times to take and slow down. Now, raise your hand if the idea of slowing down right now seems like a nice fancy dream that you can't seem to realize. Yeah. And that's the hard part, is how do we make time to slow down, to put on the back burner all the to-do list that I have, how many more things about our wedding planning that we have to deal with for just a few hours, to take some time to go get away from everything, even if it's at home in your own place of comfort, to allow God to speak in a way that God cannot speak otherwise because we're too busy to pay attention. Quietness, whether on the mountaintop in the deep valley or on the coast, wherever you find that place, or on a walk around Lake Elizabeth, for example, even though it is rather loud and busy, both with the geese and with people walking around. What does it mean for us to take some time for that sense of a mountaintop experience where we can go and see and hear and experience God in a way that kind of reminds us of what it is that we are here for, what our purpose is, how we live our lives? Because after all, once they came down from the mountaintop, they were walking to Jerusalem towards Jesus' crucifixion. It was near the end of the story. So it was vital that Jesus gave these disciples this experience to understand what it is that they're about to go through, what they're going to come through, and what their purpose is moving forward, so that they can have what they need and the experiences they need and the informing that they need in order to live into that. So may you find what you need in terms of mountaintop experiences, so that as our valleys continue to be long and arduous, you get enough of the reminder for our calling together to face the journey that we have together, particularly as a congregation, to continue to grow inwardly, outwardly, and collectively. Amen.